A stranded traveler, desperate and hungry, asked Shaquille O'Neal for just $2.37, expecting nothing more than a polite no. Instead, Shaq gave him far more than he imagined, changing his life forever. It was a warm afternoon in Chicago. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the busy, magnificent mile. Tourists and shoppers bustled past, carrying bags from expensive stores and restaurants. In the middle of the well-dressed crowd, a stranded traveler sat on the corner. His clothes were dirty and worn, his hair tangled. His name was Henry. He held a small cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps." Henry's stomach growled, but he was used to the feeling. Most people walked by without even looking at him. Some even crossed the street to avoid him. He sighed, glancing at the few coins in front of him. It wasn't enough for even a small meal. On days like this, he wondered if anyone even noticed him at all. Just as Henry was about to pack up and leave, a shadow fell over him. What happened next would change his life. He looked up and saw a tall man wearing a simple white shirt and black jeans. The man's face was partly hidden by sunglasses and a black cap, but something about him seemed familiar. The man crouched down so he was at Henry's eye level. "Hey, man," the man said, his deep voice warm. "How's it going?" Henry blinked, surprised. No one ever stopped to talk to him, especially not someone like this guy. Clearing his throat, he mumbled, "Could be better. Just trying to get enough for a meal." The man nodded and glanced at Henry's sign. Pulling out his wallet, the man looked him in the eye. Henry braced himself, expecting maybe $1 or two if he was lucky. "How about I do more than that?" the man said. Henry's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" he asked, unsure if he'd heard right. "Dead serious," the man replied, standing up and offering Henry his hand. "Let's get you sorted out today." Henry hesitated, then reached for the man's hand. His legs wobbled as he stood, weak from hunger. "Let's start with some food. Do you like steak and eggs?" the man asked. Henry nodded. "Yeah, I love steak and eggs," he said softly. As they walked, Henry noticed people staring at them. Some even pulled out their phones to snap pictures. Nervously, he asked, "Why are they all looking at us?" The man chuckled. "They probably recognize me." He lowered his sunglasses and Henry's jaw dropped. "You're Shaq," he blurted out. Shaquille O'Neal grinned. "Guilty." Henry hesitated, glancing at the coins in his hand. His stomach growled loudly, and he looked back at Shaq, who was still smiling kindly. "You don't have to do this," Henry said quietly, embarrassed. Shaq raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "Man, it's just a meal," he said casually, though his voice was kind. "Everybody deserves to eat. I've been hungry before, too. No shame in that." Henry nodded slowly. "Okay, I guess." Shaq's face lit up. "Good. Now, let's find a spot." He pointed to a restaurant nearby with a sign that read, "Au Cheval." "How do you feel about barbecue? Do you like ribs or pulled pork?" Henry's mouth watered. He couldn't remember the last time he had a proper meal, let alone something that good. "Yeah, I love barbecue," he said quickly. "Great, my treat," Shaq said with a grin. As they walked, Henry noticed more people staring. He felt awkward, but also amazed. Here he was, just some guy off the street, walking with one of the most famous athletes in the world. Shaq seemed to notice Henry's nerves and gave him a reassuring pat on the back. "Don't worry about them," he said. "Let them stare. You're with me. It's all good." At the restaurant, Shaq held the door open. The smoky, delicious smell of barbecue filled the air, making Henry's stomach growl again. Shaq laughed. "Sounds like you're ready to eat," he said. At the counter, the cashier froze when she saw Shaq. "Oh my gosh, are you—" Shaq held up a hand smiling. "Yeah, it's me, but let's keep it low-key, all right? We're just here for some food." The cashier nodded quickly, still starstruck. "Of course, what can I get for you?" Shaq turned to Henry. "Go ahead, man. Order whatever you want." Henry froze, staring at the menu. The choices felt like too much. Chopped salad, kale Caesar, chopped chicken liver, Jane's honey fried chicken, and foie gras. Henry wasn't sure where to begin. Just as he opened his mouth to order, Shaq leaned in and said something that stunned everyone nearby. Shaq must have noticed Henry's hesitation because he bent down slightly and said, "Take your time." "It's all good, man. Just pick what sounds good to you." Henry swallowed hard, then finally pointed at the chopped salad. "I'll take that," he said. After a short pause, he added, "And lemonade." Shaq nodded with approval. "Solid choice. That salad and drink are probably fire." Then he turned to the cashier. "All right." Shaq added his own order. "He'll take the crispy fries with Mornay sauce." The cashier rang it up, sneaking glances at Shaq the entire time. When she announced the total, Shaq handed her a crisp $35 bill without blinking. "Keep the change," he said with a wink. The cashier stammered a thank you, her hands shaking a little as she handed Shaq the receipt. They found a table by the window, and Shaq made sure Henry sat down first. Then Shaq leaned back in his chair and asked, "So, what's your story, man? How'd you end up out here?" Henry hesitated, unsure how much to say, but Shaq's calm vibe made him feel safe. Slowly, Henry started talking about losing his job, getting evicted, and how hard it was to get back on his feet. He even shared how far he'd traveled. Shaq listened closely, nodding here and there but never interrupting. When their food arrived, Henry's eyes went wide at his plate. The chopped salad was huge. "Go ahead," Shaq said, motioning toward the food. "Dig in." Henry picked up a fork, took a bite, and his eyes immediately closed. It was better than he ever imagined, savory, tender, smoky, with just the right amount of sauce. "This is amazing," he said with his mouth full. Shaq laughed. "Told you, man. Salad never disappoints." They ate quietly for a while, enjoying the moment. What would you do if you saw someone show this kind of kindness? Would you thank the person or stay quiet? Let us know in the comments below. For the first time in what felt like forever, Henry didn't feel invisible. He wasn't just some guy on the street. He felt like he mattered. When he finished the last bite of his salad, Henry looked up at Shaq, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," he said softly. Shaq waved it off. "You don't need to thank me, man. I'm just glad I could help. Everyone needs a little boost now and then, you know?" Henry nodded, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. It had been years since anyone showed him this kind of kindness. For the first time in a long time, he thought things might actually get better. But just when Henry thought the meal was the end of Shaq's kindness, the NBA legend leaned forward and said something that completely changed his life. After they finished eating, Shaq leaned back and smiled. "All right, next stop." "Next stop?" Henry asked, confused. "Yep," Shaq said, standing up. "You need more than just food. Let's get you cleaned up." As they left the restaurant, Henry felt a warmth in his chest. It wasn't just the meal. It was how Shaq made him feel, seen, respected, like a real person. Shaq patted him on the back. "All right, my man, next stop. Let's get you cleaned up. How do you feel about a little self-care?" Henry blinked in surprise. "Self-care?" he repeated, unsure what Shaq meant. Shaq chuckled. "Yeah, you know, haircut, shave, hot shower, all that good stuff. There's a spa a few blocks away. They'll make you look fresh." Henry hesitated, looking down at his worn clothes and dirty hands. "I don't know, Shaq. I don't think a place like that would want someone like me in there." Shaq stopped walking and turned to face him, his expression serious. "Hey, don't ever say that," he said firmly. "Everyone deserves to feel good about themselves. You're not someone like me or someone like them. You're just you, and that's enough. Trust me." Henry nodded slowly, moved by Shaq's words. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's do it." The walk to the spa was short. but Henry's nerves grew with each step. The place Shaq had in mind was sleek and modern, with big glass windows and a fancy sign. It looked like the kind of place that served rich businessmen and celebrities, not someone who'd been living on the street. When they walked in, the receptionist looked up, her professional smile freezing when she saw Shaq. "Oh my goodness," she stammered. "Welcome. How can we help you today?" Shaq gave her his signature easy grin. "Hey there, I've got my buddy Henry here. He needs the work. Haircut, shave, shower. Hook him up." The receptionist looked at Henry, her smile softening. "Of course," she said warmly. "We'd be happy to take care of him." Henry shifted nervously, feeling out of place in the elegant lobby, but Shaq gently nudged him forward. "Go on," he said. "They'll take good care of you. I'll wait right out here." A kind stylist led Henry to the back and chatted with him while he worked. He started by trimming Henry's hair, cutting away the tangled mess until his head felt lighter. Next came the shave, a careful, soothing process that left Henry's face smooth for the first time in years. Afterward, the stylist handed him a fluffy towel and directed him to the showers. The hot water felt amazing. Henry stood under the stream for a long time, letting it wash away layers of grime and stress. By the time he stepped out, now dressed in clean clothes Shaq had thoughtfully picked up earlier, Henry felt like a new person. When he returned to the lobby, Shaq was lounging in a chair, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, grinned widely, and said, "Look at you, man." Standing up, he gestured dramatically. "You clean up real nice. I'm telling you, some luxury retailer's gonna call you any day now." Henry laughed, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. "I don't know about that, but thanks. I feel like a new person." Shaq clapped him on the shoulder. "That's what I'm talking about. Now that you're feeling good, let's keep this train rolling. You got time for some shopping?" "Shopping?" Henry asked, his voice full of disbelief. But what Shaq did next left everyone in the spa speechless, including Henry. "Yeah, man," Shaq said with a grin. "You need some fresh threads to match your new look. Trust me, a good outfit can make you feel like $1,000,000. Let's hit the mall." As they headed toward the door, Henry paused and turned to Shaq. "Why are you doing all this for me?" he asked quietly. Shaq looked at him, his expression serious but kind. "Because I can," he said simply. "And because I've been blessed in my life, it's only right to pass that on. Everybody deserves a little help sometimes." Henry nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't know how to put his gratitude into words, but he hoped Shaq could see it in his eyes. "All right," Shaq said, clapping his hands. "Let's get you some gear. I know just the spot." At the mall, Shaq led Henry into a clothing store and handed him a basket. "Pick out whatever you need," he said. Henry hesitated, his eyes filling with tears. "I can't let you do all this," he said. "You're not letting me do anything," Shaq replied firmly. "I want to do this. Everyone deserves a fresh start." Henry picked out a few pairs of jeans, shirts, socks, and a sturdy pair of sneakers. Shaq added a warm jacket and a backpack to the pile. At the checkout, Shaq paid for everything without hesitation, even cracking jokes with the cashier. As they left the mall, Henry felt like a new man. He was clean, his stomach was full, and for the first time in a long time, he had more than just the clothes on his back. "Thank you," Henry said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't even know how to repay you." "You don't have to," Shaq said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Just promise me one thing. When you're back on your feet, pay it forward. Help someone else just like I helped you." Henry nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I will," he said. Before they parted ways, Shaq handed Henry a card with a number on it. "This is for a shelter, I know," Shaq said. "They'll help you with a place to stay and connect you to resources. You're not alone, Henry. Remember that." Word of Shaq's generosity spread quickly, with onlookers sharing photos and videos on social media. But Shaq never spoke publicly about it. For him, it wasn't about the attention. It was about doing the right thing. As for Henry, he used the supplies Shaq bought him to rebuild his life. He stayed at the shelter, got help finding a job, and began saving for his own place. Months later, Henry was working part-time and taking steady steps forward. Whenever he felt discouraged, he thought back to that day with Shaq. It reminded him that even in the darkest times, kindness could shine through. And when he was finally in a position to help someone else, Henry kept his promise. He paid it forward, showing the same compassion that had changed his life. The shelter Shaq connected him to became a lifeline, offering him a warm bed, counseling, workshops, and job programs. Henry made the most of every opportunity. In the end, it wasn't just about the meal, the clothes, or even the money. It was about being seen, about being treated like a human being. And that, more than anything, gave Henry hope for the future. If you were in Henry's shoes, how would you feel? Would you pay it forward if you could? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The more you subscribe, the better stories we can share.